how much of a professional opinion I can give just yet because it's so new that like my impressions of AI in specifically music at least is like I'm kind of just watching it unfold. You know what I mean? I haven't had a professional work experience with AI just yet in the at least like the creative generative AI. So there's things that I use, like certain AI tools that I use during mixing, like it analyzes the audio and it like suggests like, oh, maybe you should this use this sort of an EQ, or we recommend this type of a mastering chain. Like again, Ozone and like the different like Isotope products have like kind of like AI, help tools, which I've been using for a while. And I've actually used some AI like stem separation tools for like the immersive mix work that I do, which are like also incredible. Like it at least separates like vocal, bass, drums, and like all other instruments. Like it still is not very good at separating. Okay, here's guitar one, guitar two, piano. What it can't really break it down all that much. But when doing like catalog remixes of, old content, or like maybe the master files aren't there, or like whatever, we're like trying to like supplement a recording by just like AI stem separation. I've used it for that sense a couple of times and it's been like really helpful. Um, in terms of like the more like generative AI of like text to music, similar to like DALL-E or Sora, like everybody's freaking out about, of like, oh, hey, give me an astronaut in underwater that's driving a Ferrari, and then it just happens. That is, I think, in a way, like scary to like a lot of people. I went to a event of like there's an organization called AICP over here, which is like the Association of like Commercial Producers, the guys who are doing like advertising and stuff. And they invited a bunch of like filmmakers that have been using AI for a while, and like big companies. Like there was a guy from OpenAI there specifically. There was somebody from Google. That, they're talking about all these tools that they're developing, and some like filmmakers that are actually using the tools. And like their main point that they made was like, this is just like another tool that people are going to use. Like it's not going to replace the creativity of the people and all of these things. And I do agree with that to a certain degree. Like just because everybody on the planet right now has a smartphone that has an HD camera, we don't necessarily have more incredible like photographers or filmmakers like immediately. People are just taking pictures of their dog and their food. You know what I mean? So I don't know if like giving these AI tools to everybody is just going to like generate this insane amount of like musicians and artists and filmmakers coming to life, and like big studios can't make films, and artists can't make music because everybody's making great music. I think at the end of the day, it depends on your creativity, what you're creating, and creative people will use these tools to be creative for sure. But there's definitely like this sense of, let's say, like lower budget commercials, infomercials, or like animations, social media spots, any of those things where it's like, I don't need to make a 2 hour feature film, a artistic statement, an album of like 10 songs or whatever. I'm just trying to make a 10-15 second clip that's going to get the attention of like the buyer for a certain thing. And all of the animators that have been like trained their whole lives to use animation, and all of the musicians that have been trained their whole lives to like make music and play instruments, from those type of projects, they're, in my opinion, they're now completely cut off. Like it is definitely going to replace like the low hanging fruits, because even music libraries from my own world, like you can go to a music library, license a song for like 500 bucks for a small campaign, but you can just pay 15 bucks a month now to generate however much music you want. So why would I pay $300 to $500 on each track that I need to license for a commercial when I can go to Suna and pay $15 a month and I can generate 500 songs for any commercial that I want to do. So it's definitely going to, again, disrupt the industry in that sense. I think on the bigger scale also, like it's not necessarily going to replace people, but I think it's going to generate, like potentially it's going to generate the sense of like, why are we paying this animator this much money? Why are we paying this musician this much money? Because we can do this in 15 seconds and we can do it for $15. Why are we paying them this salary? Maybe it's not, again, the tools aren't ready to be at that quality of like being like a big production finished product type of thing. But like it's getting there. And I think it's going to be a consideration for all these companies that are always trying to like get things done cheaper, faster, whatever. It's just going to be a talking point of like, well, if you want to have people work on your project, this is the fee that you have to pay because, they have bills to pay, they have mouths to feed. But agencies can be like, well, let them use these like AI tools and create it faster and better and whatever, because I think it's just going to like, again, potentially generate some of that financial stress on the creators that are like servicing a product. Even if they're not going to be replaced, I think they're going to be asked to potentially work faster and cheaper by using these tools. In terms of the music, again, I've used recently looked into this new one called Suno, and I think it just like the quality that it was able to like it's a text to music generation tool, and it's like very similar to Sora. Like its quality is so much better than everything that was there before for music. And that's what I mean. That's why I realized, well, I sit down, like, even as somebody who's been like working in this industry for 10 years, I'm pretty quick at getting an idea done on my keyboard instruments and whatever. But this is like, again, in 10 seconds, I get incredible results. Like, I mean, I haven't gotten the paid thing yet. I just tested the free version. I asked it to do, I'm originally Turkish, so I asked it to do like a Turkish love song on like acoustic instruments. I asked it to do like a French, pop disco thing and some Spanish reggaeton and some orchestral music. And again, they're not, I don't think they're I mean, I should say this, they're incredible. Like the way that it writes Turkish or French or Spanish lyrics are perfect. It sings them perfectly. It doesn't phrase the words in wrong places. It sings them as a person would sing. And it's using all of these, instruments that are applicable to each genre that I asked it to do. And it's again doing it in 15 seconds. So like I could have created those things as well if somebody asked me to do them in a day for a commercial, but it would have taken me like 4 or 6 hours to do, and it does it in 15 seconds. Um, so that's my point. I don't think it's a finished product yet, still, but it's like light years ahead of like what we've seen before, at least in the music generative AI stuff. And that's what I mean of like, well, agencies and these small companies, they're just going to start using this because they just need like a quick plug and they don't need like all this live production and everything that we do. For me, like if I'm going to start using AI as a tool as a producer, I need it to be a lot more granular, like as if I'm like playing a synthesizer, a library instrument, or whatever. I need to be able to tell AI, okay, give me, again, let's say we're talking about reggaeton, give me a dembo at this tempo using like these shakers and these like timbales, whatever. I don't like the shaker sound, change the shaker sound. Okay, great. I can now take those as stems and put it in my production and can build my track on top of that, because again, as a producer, I'm doing the same thing with software instruments, just like programming, and I can just tell it, okay, like this is my tempo, this is the groove, change the 16th note pattern to this, whatever. Like if it can get granular as if I'm programming something, but I'm just like telling it to do instead of like playing it on something. It's going to be faster. I see that as a tool, which I, to this day, I bring live musicians in on certain projects that I do, but a lot of the things that I do is also like in the box with, software libraries and instruments anyway. So if it can get that granular and can give me like individual stems and all of these things, then it can definitely become part of my workflow while I'm producing things faster. Um, it can also like, I guess, make my life easy in terms of like the demo process and like talking with clients, because they can send me AI examples of the things that they like. They already send me, oh, we want it to sound like Imagine Dragons. We want it to sound like whatever. They send real life examples already, but they can be like, hey, these are like some of the things that come up, like we kind of like this, what do you think? Or I can send them like they have these ideas and I can put it into an AI thing, like give me a mixture of Pharrell and Katy Perry and whatever, and give me something that sounds like this instead of me writing it. And then I can tune the AI to give me like 4 or 5 different examples that I can send to my client of like, is this kind of what you're looking for, or are you after something else? Because sometimes like in the ad world, like you go down a rabbit hole chasing something, and then they're like, oh, we actually want something in like 180. They want something completely different. So it can kind of help with that process of like showing options to a client, let them actually decide what they want. Once they hear it, we can kind of do it better instead of wasting time on going down rabbit holes ourselves and using the time and budget that way. So again, this is all to say that I mean I think there is use for it. It can definitely like help our process and make have us be more efficient. Um, but as I said at the beginning, I think it's probably going to replace a lot of the low-hanging fruits, entry-level projects, and also will probably, harm our budgets, I think, just because, they know that we can use this and work faster.
Where do you see problems? Well, let's say when you're working on a feature film,
Mhm.
because it makes sense to perhaps imagine that AI will help you with certain issues, maybe technical issues, maybe creative issues on a massive scale, such as a feature film.
Let me think. I think, when you're talking about like music composition, for example, because there's multiple aspects to making a feature film. If we're talking about sound and music for it, starting with the music side, I think the job of the composer isn't necessarily just to compose music. It's a very diplomatic job of like pleasing the director, the producer, however many producers, the studio involved. There's so many egos in the room and everybody wants something. And when you do a piece, everybody has the creative notes, and like your job as a composer becomes also like, okay, who is like the real decision maker? How do I make them happy first, whilst also kind of addressing the notes of everybody else and making them feel heard and seen and addressed? So again, I don't think an AI tool is going to like replace that role of a person just being in the room and like talking to people. I think what I mentioned earlier, there's, composers can um maybe like once they like, let's say they wrote a theme that they like and they're trying to create different versions, they can upload that music to AI and be like, okay, using this theme that I wrote, give me a different version, an alternate, like one that's just on this instrument, that instrument, that's a bit more, has this flavor, that flavor. Like, again, we can already do these things ourselves, but it can be a tool for the composer to be like, okay, let me just get the AI version done in a minute, and let me show the guys of like how it would sound like immediately when we're in the room discussing the scene. Okay, here's the same theme played on strings and action drums, and here's the same theme on like strings and piano. How does that feel against the film? So it's still the composer's music, and the composer will eventually, hire the musicians and get it produced properly once the, shot callers decide which direction that they want to go. I think that can be a at least like generative AI music tool that can be used. In terms of like what I do, for let's say mixing, again, except for the mixing tools that Isotope has of like suggesting EQ and whatever, which I sometimes use, sometimes don't. These are just like you pick and choose kind of a thing. Um, if there is some sort of smart I don't know, AI that can become your assistant of like session management, you get everything from the composer. Like right now a person has to like session prep before you can actually like start mixing. I don't know if there's that much of an integration of like macros, it realizing, okay, these tracks are these, let me color them, let me put them in a folder, whatever. These are the things that to fasten my workflow would be helpful, but it requires like integration with multiple different DAWs and different software. I don't know if that's gonna happen anytime soon necessarily. Um, but let me think in terms of like sound design. There's already like some sound design tools that are like pretty fast, like Add app. It's called Add, and it's like a linear kind of like, it's almost like a video editor's like sound designing tool. You're watching a scene and you're pressing like keyboards or like using like hotkeys on any other controller to trigger, I need a punch sound, I need a ambience, I need this, and there's like certain keywords, and it just generates from its library different sound effects as you're watching it, like fills up the scene. And then you can go in and like, okay, I don't like this, give me another option, give me another option until you find like the sound effect that you actually like. So there is that tool already that exists. Things like that could probably be fine-tuned more for sound designers to like create faster and do like linear sound design. But again, in like feature films, it's like so detailed. It's not like just putting like three, shing ching, sword clings for a scene. There's like so much detail that goes into creating, ambiences and recording like real forests and whatever. So um I think there can be again some applications for faster workflows, but I don't necessarily see AI on like the more tactile functions of like again mixing and whatever, like sound design and recording, replacing that aspect just yet. Again, it can it's similar to like text to music generation. Maybe they'll come up with like text to sound design generation of like, give me this like forest ambience and it's raining and it's like we're in Tokyo looking over whatever, and it gives you all these like sound effects. But all of these generative AI tools, like licensing is also an issue, right? That's another thing that I didn't touch on. The Suno company that I mentioned, I don't think they paid licenses to feed their AI brain. And the fact that it's just generating this like Turkish, French, and Spanish stuff, I think they just fed Spotify into it. And once they do go public and people are going to be like, hey, like you used my music and you didn't pay me to train your AI model on my music. So I think there's like also hurdles to get through in that ethical sense of like, okay, AI can do these, obviously it's a program, it's a tool, but are the creatives being like compensated for feeding these machines that can create these outputs essentially? I got kind of like sidetracked at the end of that conversation, but I think maybe you can pull that together in the edit.
Um, my immediate thought, like about the ethical issue, is maybe it would be nice. I'm just daydreaming. Maybe it would be nice if all these companies they had to like erase everything and start from scratch. Now that they've proven themselves that they could do it, now
Right,
let's do it again. And this time it's kind of like Spotify to the artist. Whoever
right.
wants to be, whoever wants to contribute, get some money in return. That would be
Yeah,
nice. It's not going to
that
happen.
that would be great. I think like OpenAI with all of the, like lawsuits against them. They're trying to like license content at this point.
Right.
But all of these other companies, and I kind of get it from their point of view. They're trying to create something and they need content to see if their creation works. So they're just like feeding it and they're like, okay, great. Like we fixed all the bugs. Now this works. But in the meantime, they've used all of this because they didn't want to negotiate a fee, in the beginning. Like you're saying, if they could, take that position of like telling their, shareholders and investors to be like, we're actually going to wipe the brain and let's go to these creators and like pay them a licensing fee, that would be incredibly, I don't know, ethical and generous and kind of them. But I don't know how many of those people will actually do those things.
It could even bring more work to the artist.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes me wonder of like where the industry is going. Just, I don't know if like getting replaced is going to be a thing for the reasons that I mentioned. I think people still like to work with other people, I think. At least on like again, kind of bigger projects. And when I say bigger, like any kind of feature film, even a low budget, $1 million, let's say, or even lower feature film, if you're doing something, you need people to do it with. Yes, you can, with all sorts of AI tools, you can just do it by yourself by creating different scenes and, prompt to whatever and put it all together. But I mean, what I think is like all of us as creative people got into whatever creative field we're in because we like doing this thing. None of us got decided to be like, hey, I'm going to become an animator. Hey, I'm going to be a musician. Hey, I'm going to be a director because it's an easy life. Oh, I'll make loads of money and won't have to work again. Let me just like, no, we knew this was a tough road to get into. We knew the odds were like against us, but we just like this. I want to do this for my life. I don't want to be whatever a lawyer or like a banker or whatever. Like this is the creative field that I want to be in, and this is what I do with my life. Um, so I think, you know, as a community, I think we should just like hold that thought in mind and like let it not replace the things that we want to do. AI can be a great tool. It can help with a lot of things, and let's use it to help the things that we kind of like don't want to do. But like, let's keep doing the things that we actually want to be doing in life, whether it's like going on set, working with the costume designer, creating the costumes. If you're doing like a choreography, do that, practice with the actors, get it like, because all of this, like the human interaction is like part of the creative process. When you're making a record, yes, it's the record that people listen to, but when you're with an artist working on a song or an album for like months on end, the part of the record making process is like you're taking almost like a snapshot, a record of who you were at that time in your life. And it's like who you're interacting with, like who you do the record with. So if you're just like on your computer, just doing it by yourself, it's a very lonely, sad, and I don't know, uninteresting life, in my opinion. So I think people will still gravitate towards like, working with people and trying to like involve them as much as, they can. Um, but I mean, I think it should be just, it should just become a tool that we use. And hopefully that tool is something that doesn't, eradicate, um, how should I put this? Like people's like, talent and jobs immediately. And in terms of like, I don't know, animation, set design, certain things it can, because you can just like type in and it creates this like 3D model and you can 3D print things. And so you don't need like a modelist like carving from wood and creating like a model for you. So like those things are already like quote unquote like replacing people. Um, and hold on, I mean, it's a tough thing because again, you want the tools to like help you like create the things that you want, but um I don't know, like I got inspired as a kid to pick up the guitar and play, and like I hope there's still like the generation after us like feels the need to like learn from instruments and pick up something and like finds joy in doing that instead of just like talking into their whatever VR headset, be like, generate me whatever, and they're just like happy with this AI generated, reality that will be available to them in the whatever future. I don't think any composer is going to give like their musical theme as an audio file to a producer or director, like, hey, like go wild with this and like let me know what you come up with. I mean, there's already like directors and producers without any musical knowledge that try to give musical feedback, which is something, that we as musicians struggle with, like trying to like there is a fine line. If people don't know anything about music, I think is a bit more helpful for us because they're communicating emotion and what they want to get out of it. If they have a little bit of musical knowledge, then it gets like convoluted and weird because they want to like incorporate themselves in the process as a musician rather than being a director. And I had somebody tell me like they wanted the notes to be staccato, which means like short and quick, but then they said we want them to be staccato, but not like super short and quick. Like it should be like a little long, and what they were saying was just like contradicting themselves. And it's just like they heard of something and they wanted to like use it in a phrase and whatever. So I think like if you just give those tools to those people, I don't know how, like, what kind of results you're gonna get, and it can turn into like a more dangerous, like, demoitis situation. The director always has a demo track and always tries to go for the demo track, get as close to it because they've been hearing it in the edit suite for like months and months and months. The composer hopefully can do a better job of conveying their emotions. And what I meant to say is like the composer can easily, very quickly kind of create options to like present to those people and be like, what do you think about this? How does this feel? And kind of like do it faster. But to your point, I think the directors and producers will probably use those tools without the composer offering them and be like, hey, look what I generated. I like this. Maybe, do something like that. I think that's probably going to happen. But um, I don't know. I think there's still, how should I say this? There's still benefit to like trusting your composer, your animator, your whoever to do the job that you hire them to do and not necessarily like get in and try to do it yourself. You know what I mean? Even if there's like AI tools that kind of like allow you to do it. I think it's, the best directors or producers, I think, that are people that communicate, feelings and emotions and ideas rather than hard, examples and things like that.